Setting up for a webcam recording. The first thing that you're going to want to think about is light. When thinking about how to set up in terms of your lighting, the biggest thing is you want to remember to sort of have all of your light come from behind the camera. Anything that is in the camera's range, it will adjust to, which often means that either there's a very bright spot behind you or you get thrown into shadow in the darkness. So whenever possible, set up whatever light source you have coming from behind the camera and onto you. So now, to be honest, in this setup, I am getting a lot of light on my face, perhaps, perchance, a little too much, as you can tell where it looks kind of white on my cheeks. It's not perfect, but the light is not washing my face out so much as just making me seem kind of ghostly pale, which I can live with. Another thing to think about when setting up a space is the depth of the room that you're recording in. If possible, aim for a room where you will get a little bit of distinction between the background and the foreground. In doing that, you're visually already pinpointing where is the area of focus. It's whatever's happening in the foreground. Which brings us to our third thing, background. The big thing to remember with backgrounds is that anything that is on screen does demand some attention. So try and aim for something that's a bit interesting without necessarily overwhelming you or whatever the focal point of your video is meant to be. In my case, I have gone for a very classic woman sitting in front of a bookshelf. Now, the hope with my setup is that I am far enough away from the bookshelf that you can see it, understand what it is, but are not necessarily reading every title that's there. I also have some fun art and a weird flower, and those too are not necessarily saying a ton, but help to give a bit of color and a bit of character to the space I'm in, which can just be visually comforting to see. I would also recommend for myself that I not wear orange in front of this orange wall, but we've come this far and it's very comfortable. One big thing to consider when thinking about your background is what is coming out of your body in your image. So in my case, I'm sitting in the middle of this wall without anything there, but if I were to move over, now I have just a line popping up from my bun. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it is kind of distracting and can be just a sort of odd thing to look at. So aim, if possible, to not have anything sort of popping out over you. The same can also be said of this picture that's been behind me. Now, while I think it's very fun and I like the idea of having some blue to offset all of the orange in this room, it is very close to my shoulder, so it might be something to consider just moving it out of the way. Yeah, I mean, even moving it over helps to sort of give a bit of distinction between the two. Another thing to think about in terms of background is stillness. If possible, avoid a space where there might be a person that's sitting in the background, or there might be a sort of hot zone of people walking in and out, because the noise and movement can be very distracting.
I find like online textbooks.
So, blank walls. They're not the worst. They're also not the best. They can be a little visually bleh to look at. So even adding just a bit of stuff to your background can help your image become just that much more exciting to look at as a viewer. So I recommend that, if possible, put a little something behind you. I mean, a plant does wonders. Plants are great. They're charming to look at without overwhelming any space. When thinking about lighting, when thinking about depth, when thinking about backgrounds, all of it mainly exists to just support whatever it is that you would like someone to focus on. So in this case, for this room, I have the light coming from the window that's hitting me and not too much of the background, helping to distinguish between me and it. And I also have just fun gobbledygook behind me that I think just adds a bit of color and interest to what you're saying without really saying too much other than, this is a house with books, which is a claim I'll stand by.